If the Magi were, in fact, of Jewish descent, that would explain why they'd be looking for Jewish signs in the sky, and why they would be excited enough at what they saw to get on their camels and ride 700 miles to Jerusalem. And it would also explain why when they got to Jerusalem, in addition to asking questions, they wanted to worship the Jewish king. Who wants to worship a Jewish king? Perhaps someone of Jewish descent. Watch Herod's reaction. When Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. Everybody who heard the story that the Magi presented was disturbed. That is a clue also. It's kind of a hidden clue. It comes back again in a few minutes, but let me just talk about that for a moment and tell you why it's a clue. I'll back into it by getting you to participate. How many people in here have seen the Milky Way? Almost everybody here. Here's the deal. The Milky Way is not visible in most parts of the country for several reasons, light pollution and air pollution being the two major ones. But in ancient times, they had neither problem. For example, they didn't have bright lights like this. The brightest thing anyone ever saw at night was a flame. So their eyes were adjusted. Plus, they didn't have air pollution, which cuts down visibility. They didn't have smog and stuff like that back then. As a result, they all had seen the Milky Way. Everybody had seen the Milky Way, and were familiar with the stars and the constellations and all, because the star, they were perfectly available to the naked eye, unlike most of our cities. Another reason they knew about the stars is it's a hot, arid place to live in the Middle East. And in the summertime, people used to sleep on their roofs. That way they got off the street level for a little bit of security and got out of the hot house and just get to lay there in the relative cool. And as you lay there on your back, what are you seeing? I mean, the internet, like you people? No, they're looking at the stars all night, every night. As long as they're up, they're seeing stars. And so people understood the sky. Now here's why that's a clue. When they heard about the star from the Magi, they were shocked. That's a kind of clue, and I'm going to come back to it in a minute. It appears twice. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. Now what's going to happen is his chief priests and teachers, they're going to quote the ancient prophet Micah. And it's a fateful prophecy, too, that Micah makes. In fact, if Micah hadn't made this prophecy, Herod wouldn't have killed all the little babies in Bethlehem. The king's experts say, "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet Micah has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people Israel." That's how Herod decided to kill the babies. Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. That's the second time one clue is coming by. He doesn't know when the star appeared. He had to ask. That's an important clue. And then the next clue is that it's associated with an exact timing. Okay, we're building up our 9 points. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way. And the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. 2 more clues. It went ahead of them as they went from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Let's do that one first. You may not know the geography of Israel. You don't need a map. You don't need a star. You don't need a guide to find Bethlehem from Jerusalem. It's 5 miles south on the main road. You can see Bethlehem from Jerusalem. So it's just 5 miles south, so we know the star, whatever it was, had to be ahead of them as they were headed due south. Okay? Oh, you know what else? There's another clue I have to pull out of this for you. Remember that they saw the star when they were in the east, and then they traveled to Jerusalem, and then they saw the star still? That means the star endured over time. And then here's the tough one. Here's the toughest of all the 9 points. Until it stopped over the place where the child was. Can a star stop? You wouldn't think so, but it can, and did, and I'm going to show you. You now know more about the star than any of your neighbors. I promise you, you now know the 9 points that identify the star. So I'm going to give you a little quiz here. Don't worry, you'll do great. First, might the star have been a shooting star, meteorite? No, I agree with you. Not. Why not? There are probably 6 or 8 reasons why. Doesn't stop, right? Shooting stars don't do that, right? Gone for 2 seconds. Okay, what about, if it's not a shooting star, what about comet? I'll answer that one for you. Comets are a better candidate because they rise in the east like other stars. They endure over time. They can be spectacular. Some of them have tails that could be taken to point. That's kind of cool. But I don't think it was a comet. I got basically 3 reasons for thinking that. First one is kind of soft science, but it's just the fact that from the earliest recorded human history, and by that I mean cave paintings, from the very earliest times, comets have been omens of doom. That's how humans conceive of them, because they operate outside the normal system. They come from nowhere, it seems like. So in the earliest cave paintings, if there's a comet in there, in the cave painting, all the animals are running from it. And even in the 20th century, even as far as that modern a time, people still thought comets were omens of doom. The first time Halley showed up in the 20th century, all the churches packed. Everybody thought, well, the world was ending. So what I'm thinking is probably wasn't a comet. I mean, would God choose an omen of doom to announce the coming of Messiah? I mean, I don't know. Maybe. It doesn't seem likely. But there are other reasons not to think it was not a comet. Several ancient cultures kept excellent astronomical records, notably the Chinese. You go to the records, you look in the years 2 and 3 BC, which is our hypothesis, no comets. But the one that persuades me the best, the one that I think is the strongest evidence that it wasn't a comet, is that's kind of a funny clue, where Herod was surprised about it.
Herod didn't know when the star appeared. He had to ask. And that's really fascinating to me because that just suggests that it may have been an ordinary thing in the sky that was striking when explained. When the Magi put it in context and said what was happening and had been happening for the last 9 months, I think that's what blew him away.
Look, if a comet appears in that ancient culture where everybody sees the sky most and every night, are people going to know about it? Yeah, and it's an omen of doom. It's going to be the talk in town. I mean, everybody's going to be buzzing about it. So probably not a comet. Well, how about a nova, an exploding star? Now they appear at a point in time. That's good. Last over time. They rotate. I mean, I should say they rise in the east. Probably not a nova, though, for the same reasons. You look at the Chinese records, there aren't any novae recorded. And also, Herod would not have had to ask. You know, if the thing appears, everyone's going to know. So have we wiped out everything? No, we haven't. There's another class of things.
We have one class of stars that we call wandering stars. Today, moderns call them planets, but that word comes from the Greek verb to wander. They're called wandering because they move around in the field of fixed stars.
When you go outside and look up tonight, you're going to see just this huge canopy of stars. We often visualize it as a sphere over the Earth. And those stars, most of them in that sphere, they move very, very slowly. Of course, it's really us that's moving, but the Earth rotates, and it makes the stars appear to rise in the east and set in the west. Right? Most stars then are in the fixed class, but then there are the wandering stars, the planets. And the planets move around through the field of fixed stars. They do interesting things. So might one of these wandering stars have something to do with Messiah's star? Well, that's going to be our working hypothesis. Anybody tell me what's the largest planet in the solar system? That's Jupiter. Jupiter's named for the highest god in the Roman pantheon. It's a gas giant, we call it. It's the biggest planet by far. It's about 11 times the diameter of Earth. It's hundreds of times more massive. Runs in an orbit way outside of Earth. It takes about 12 years to get around the sun. So might Jupiter, which has been known as the king planet from ancient times because it's the biggest one, might Jupiter have something to do with Messiah's star? Well, that's going to be a hypothesis that we can test. Now, it's not going to be enough to have a kingly name. Jupiter's going to have to do some pretty peculiar things to satisfy all 9 points from the Bible. So did Jupiter do that? So now I'm going to take you and show you the starry dance. We're going to go to the sky and see what really happened 2,000 years ago. This program, incidentally, is it's called Starry Night, and it's a fabulous program. I'm only going to use it just a little here today to show you something spectacular, but if you're interested in astronomy, it's great stuff. It's used widely by astronomers around the world. It is extremely accurate. It incorporates Kepler's 3 laws of planetary motion, plus Newton refined Kepler's work. He added something called perturbations, and that's all included in the software. So what I'm going to be showing you through these screens is not something that approximates what things looked like in ancient times. It's quite an accurate reproduction of the positions of the planets, because we can actually calculate that. So we can view from any place we like. I'm choosing to view from Babylon, because I believe that's probably where the Magi came from. That's the Eastern school. And now most everybody in this room knows that Babylon's in Iraq. People didn't used to know that, but now everybody's very familiar. It's about 60 miles south of Baghdad, right? And you can choose any time to view, and we're viewing 3 BC. It's September. This is the compass rose. It says east, and this red line is the path of Jupiter through the sky. I've turned it on just to make it easier for you to follow Jupiter. Now, when I animate the sky, what's going to happen is you're going to watch the screen increment, and it's going to kind of do it stepwise. And what's happening in between those steps is the program is running through all that math to make sure that exactly what you see is exactly what happened. So let's take a look. And we see Jupiter rising. Oh, cool, Mr. Larson. There better be more, right? Oh, yeah, there's more. I'm already messing with you, though, because there are actually 2 things here. Can you see the 2 objects there? Let me take you to another screen so I can enlarge it without messing this screen up. I'm just going to zoom in. And as I zoom in, you'll find that there are 2 objects there. This is Jupiter. The smaller object is a star. It has a name. It's called Regulus. That's the same word root as our word regal. The Babylonians called Regulus Sharu, which means king. The Romans called Regulus Rex, which means king. This is the king star. We now have the king planet and the king star coming into very close approach. So I'm out there on the deck and I'm typing away and I find this and I'm thinking, well, that's pretty cool. I mean, I can see king there.
Well, that was interesting. It was. That was a conjunction. It's interesting. But it also made me suspicious, because like I say, I'm a lawyer and I'm not an astronomer and I didn't want to be fooled. I don't want to find something that turns out to not have any significance at all. Maybe that happens every Thursday, So I started running the universe backwards and forwards, just trying to find out how often do these conjunctions happen.
Here's the situation. Let's just make some assumptions to put this in context for you. I don't know how old any of the Magi were, but just make some assumptions. Let's say you have to be an apprentice to become a magus. Let's say that you make the grade by age 20 or something. Then you got maybe 50 years until your eyes go bad and you can't observe anymore. So let's say they had 50-year careers. And let's put them in mid-career, just making some assumptions here. If that was the case, and if they were watching, weather permitting, if they were watching, they might have seen something like this 2 or 3 times before. So somewhat rare, somewhat interesting. Yeah, make a note of it. That's what they were into. But probably wouldn't send them to Jerusalem. Probably not. But of course, there's more. Now, I'd already told you that wandering stars move about in the field of fixed stars, right? But they don't do it correctly. Just so you'll know, the planets misbehave. Let me show you what they do. Here's what it looks like. Here's what Mars looks like as it moves through the fixed stars. It moves along like you'd expect it to, but then it slows down and loops. Continues on a ways and loops again. Well, what's with that, Mars? That's pretty weird, isn't it? Okay, I mean, it's looping through the sky like that. That's exactly what it looks like, but of course it's optical. It's what astronomers call retrograde motion. Retrograde motion.
It's caused by the fact that we're watching from a moving platform. Just like when you are driving your car and you pass somebody on the roadway, they appear to drop back. They're not really going backwards. You're just watching from a moving platform. Same thing, we're watching from Earth. And so when Earth spins past another planet in its orbit, the planet may appear to act strangely, move backwards, retrograde motion. And Jupiter does that, of course.
Jupiter's retrograde is very shallow, if I can get my star to go on. Jupiter goes like this. It slows up. It doesn't blink like that. And does a very shallow little circle. Kind of a little, like that. Yeah, it kind of looks like a halo over somebody. So did Jupiter do that at an interesting time? Well, yes, it did. Let's take a look. I'll animate Jupiter and let it drop a tail so you can watch it. Jupiter passed Regulus, changed its mind, stopped and went back for a second close approach. That's 2. Passed Regulus again, changed its mind, and came back for a third close approach. Triple conjunction, much more rare, much more rare. And if you choose to see it, Jupiter has just drawn a halo or a crown over the king planet. Interesting. I can see king there, can't you? I can see king, 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 right? Some people would say, well, king, 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 new king, or maybe it means birth. I don't know. I can't get much more out of that, but I do see king there, very sure. A lot of stuff still missing, though. I mean, I don't see the Jewish nation up there anyplace. So, of course, there's more. Next, I want to ask you a question. 12 Jewish tribes. One produces Messiah. Which one? Anybody know? You're right. Say it louder. It's Judah. That's right. What's the animal symbol for the tribe of Judah? That's correct. Okay, good. Let me take you to the first book of the Bible. Look at Genesis 49 for a prediction of the coming Messiah. We read, "You're a lion's cub, O Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down. Like a lioness, who dares rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he comes to whom the scepter belongs, and the obedience of the nations is his." I need a prop. I'm going to use this for a prop. Y'all know what a scepter is? The thing that kings hold to show that they're kings, right? I want you to remember the scepter is going to show up again. Okay? So this is a prediction of Messiah coming in his role as King of Kings. Well, that association with the Lion of Judah, that helps us. Let's go back to the sky. If we look at the sky and turn on the constellations, we'll see that Jupiter has been crowning Regulus right here in the constellation Leo the Lion. Well, now I can see an association with the Jewish nation. I can see King, King, King in Leo. Well, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool. but there's something even bigger that I got to show you that really spooked me when I saw it. And to do that, I'm going to take you back to the Bible, to the last book of the Bible. We've just been in the first book of the Bible. Now we're in the last book of the Bible, Revelation. And I want to talk a little bit about Revelation first and about its author, because I want to make sure you're all on the same page. It was written by a man named John. He wrote 5 books of the New Testament, including the Gospel. He wrote Revelation when he was an old man. And under dire circumstances. The guy was on the island of Patmos, basically locked up for his Christian beliefs. And he was there, most commentators think, for 6 to 9 months, and basically solitary on a rocky island. And he was old at that point, maybe probably in his 80s, maybe almost, could even be 90s. And that's when he wrote the book of Revelation. Now all of you who've read it, you know it speaks in a swirling prophetic imagery, and it's a lot of it seems metaphorical. Sometimes it's not chronological. It's a difficult book. It's a difficult book to interpret. But I can't explain most of it. I can, though, explain a little. I'm going to go to Revelation 12 and show you a corner that I think I understand. Let's take a look and see what John describes. He says, "A great and wondrous sign appeared in heaven." What is the sign? Well, I want you to watch this. It's a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on his heads. If you understand this, please email me, okay? His tail swept 1/3 of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so that he might devour her child the moment it was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. Hey, here's that scepter again. Who's the child? That's Jesus in his role as King of Kings. We saw the prediction in Genesis, and here in Revelation he appears again, and he's got that scepter because he's now the King of Kings. So, if the child is Jesus, who's the woman? Yeah, that's pretty easy. Okay. And in metaphorical terms, who's the dragon that waited at the foot of the woman to devour the child? That's Herod. The dragon is Herod. John elsewhere tells us in Revelation that the dragon is Satan, but we know in human terms it was Herod. So we now understand what he's describing is the birth of Jesus, but he sees it in the heavens. I'm going to show you something now that definitely got all the little hairs up on the back of my neck and on the back of my arm, and because what follows Jupiter into the sky as we animate the sky is Virgo, the Virgin. And she is clothed in the sun. And she has the moon at her feet. It's just a crescent moon, a very small crescent, barely visible moon. There's a reason for that. This is Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. The sheer weight of symbolism in the sky on this day blew me away.
In September of 3 BC, when Jupiter is coming in a close conjunction with Regulus, the king planet and the king star, that happening in Leo, the lion representing the nation of Judah, the tribe of Judah, that rises in the sky, and behind it rises Virgo, the Virgin, and she's clothed in the sun, and she has the moon at her feet. It's exactly what John described in Revelation 12. It's what he saw in his vision. It's obvious. That got me. When I wound the time forward and saw that rise and realized, oh my goodness, that's what John saw. There it is. That really let all the hairs come up.